There's a real epidemic of women being tapped out from their intuition. Women buying lines and stories and, oh, he's so hot, or look at his muscles, or look at what he's projecting, as opposed to seeing a man and giving him time and really spending time with him and understanding who he is and his character. What is his character? Where is he headed? Hello, hello. Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of Ancient Intelligence. You've got your host, Anya Shack here, and I'm excited to dive in today to the topic of a woman's intuition and how a woman's intuition is in perfect relationship and harmony with a man's potential, a man actualizing his greatest potential. So there's so many stories and myths and archetypes that reflect this. And the reason I want to talk about this tonight, and again, it'll be a short solo episode, is because I was having a conversation with a man, a single man in his 30s, quite successful. And he really shared with me, he said, you know what annoys me the most about dating right now and about the women I'm meeting is I feel like I can't get any love for my process, for my journey. I feel like I have to lie about everything that I have because I'm not being given the benefit of the doubt, right? He's not being allowed to just like be human and be in a transition. He's so successful, emotionally intelligent, very smart, but most recently he made a big career change and he went back to school. So financially, he's in a transition. And he says that every time he meets a new woman, there's this feeling that like she can't see where he's going. She can't see all the work he's done. She can't see that the place he's in is temporary and he's really hardworking and really on a trajectory of greatness. And it's so unfortunate because the type of woman that could actually see where he's going and wants to support him in that will win over his love and his trust. And then she'll then benefit from the support and safety and grounding that she's actually looking for because they will have co-created as a team to get to where they're going. But unfortunately, with this like hyper over individualistic mindset that people have these days, it's like, what are you going to do for me? Or what do you have versus what do I have? As opposed to the real truth of union, which is the whole is greater than the sum of its parts. And it's about going on a journey together. And what I'm going to get into within this episode as well is this notion that helping and supporting a man in his goals is actually one of the most beautiful ways that a woman can find herself fully fulfilled, fully expressed, and fully in her power and influence in a way that she wouldn't get to have if her whole life journey was like me, 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 me. Let me get to the top of X rank or Y position. It's a very hyper masculine thing to want, is the highest rank in a public office or in a public position. That's not actually deep down in the womb of a woman what she wants, but she's been programmed to feel this way or to want this because of this grand division we have between the sexes and this like race to the top. And it's just so unfortunate because if women are racing to the top and men are racing to the top, they have to be racing different mountaintops. And that's why everyone's so alone. In the end, like if you really want union, it's one mountain with one goal, and both of you are co-creating together to rise to the top. And so that is something that is not understood very well these days. And I want to get to the bottom of a few elements of why women are so disconnected from their intuition and their ability to believe in a man and to see the goodness that exists in a man and where he's headed, and to be there for the journey, right? First off, I want to go back to a biblical story because I am in a Kabbalah study session with the Rebbitzin in my community and a couple of other women, and we talked about Rachel recently. And so I just want to give a quick little story of Rachel, story time. I know, just like being a kid, sometimes it's fun to just listen to a story. And so Rachel in the Old Testament, she is the daughter of one of the richest men in town. Okay. One of the richest men in town. And her father had brought in a new shepherd. Okay. And this new shepherd didn't know how to read. Everybody in the town thought that he was dumb, but she saw potential in him. There was something in her intuition that said that she wanted to be with this non-reading, non-writing, for everyone else and who was concerned, dumb new shepherd in town. She told her father she wanted to marry the shepherd. He said, "What, are you crazy? There's all these, eligible men in the town that have money, that have status. No way." She said, "Father, I want to marry the shepherd." So he disowns her. So basically, she says to this shepherd, Akiva, and she says that if you learn Torah, then I will marry you, right? If you learn the Bible, if you study the Old Testament. So he starts learning with children just in the town. She then sends him away for 12 years to a bigger, it's called the yeshiva, to study for another 12 years. And at that point, she had already had a child, right? She had to sell her hair for money. She had no finances, no money coming in from her father. He returns 12 years later and he was walking through the town and he overheard someone saying that she wants him to go back for another 12 years. And this was because she hadn't heard of any big transformation yet. He goes back for another 12 years and he comes back with a procession of followers behind him. This man, in all of that time, becomes the most well-read, most prolific, most wise new rabbi in the town. He comes back with a procession of people. The father looks at him in awe. He comes up, he greets Rachel, and he says to the whole town, "Everything that I have done, everything that I have learned, all that I have achieved is thank you to Rachel. Thank you to Rachel and what she saw in me and her belief in me." Father-in-law reunites with them. All is well with the world. That's the end of the story. So Rachel's intuition and going against all that would have been easy and convenient and safe for her to do brought this man to greatness. And we can think of stories like this over and over again. You think of Winston Churchill and how he met his wife when he was just out of school, before he became the prime minister of Britain, before he even became a politician. She was there with him, right? And I want to kind of come back also to another story. I want to talk about the story of Beauty and the Beast, because I actually was just listening to Jordan Peterson talk about this. And this goes super well with what I was just saying about how Rachel in the Bible story, like, she could have been really comfortable marrying one of the guys from town, right? Had a lot of money, would live in, be plush, but it wasn't what her intuition was telling her to do. She believed so deeply in this man, right? And what he could bring to her and what kind of union they could create together. If you think about Beauty and the Beast, okay, Jordan Peterson was talking about how this is kind of like every woman's big fantasy in a way, taming the beast. So if you think about the dynamic in Beauty and the Beast, the guy who's like charming and attractive, Gaston, wants to be with her. He's courting her, and she says no. She says no. She sees some potential in the beast. She sees something inside of him that he might not even be willing to see himself. And through her softness, through her openness to him, through her kindness, through her acceptance and support, he transforms, right? And then finally, she gets the man that he was on the inside, he gets to be on the outside, and everything ends in a beautiful fairy tale fashion. Of course, that's not real life fully, but it does show us that Beauty was tapped into her intuition in that she could see through Gaston. She could see that he was a narcissist. He was just coaxing her. Deep down, he was insecure. He couldn't really be there. He was not the man that she was deeply searching for. The beast was that man. But from afar, from at first glance, you wouldn't have said that, right? And so I think there is a real epidemic. I know it's like a kind of intense word to use, but there's a real epidemic of women being tapped out from their intuition, women buying lines and stories and, oh, he's so hot, or look at his muscles, or look at what he's projecting, as opposed to seeing a man and giving him time and really spending time with him and understanding who he is and his character. Like, what is his character? Where is he headed? And then instead of brushing him off or being kind of like, what are you going to do for me? Actually giving him her support, giving him your support, right? Because your support is actually the food, the energy that he needs to achieve his goals. It's this beautiful co-creative process, right? It's like you just think about all of the historical examples and the current examples. Let's talk about Alex Hormozy for a second. So I was just listening to the most recent Modern Wisdom with Alex Hormozy, and he was talking about how, well, first of all, people are bad at defining things. They are. They're bad at defining big, important things like love. And so love him or hate him, vibe with him or don't vibe with him, but he talks about how he needed to operationalize the definition of love because it's just so obtuse and it's just so hard to define, and everyone acts on love differently, everyone feels love differently, everyone thinks about love differently. There has to be some way to understand who you love more than the other, or like how love is acted on, which I can agree with. And so for him, it doesn't mean it's true for everybody, but it is a great question to pose for everybody listening. How do you define love? How can you define love through action, right? For him, love means the more I'm willing to give up, the more I love you. So for him, he was talking about how, maybe you'd imagine I love my mom and my wife more than anything on the planet, and my family. But for him, he was like, that's actually not true, because I would give up more for my videographer to keep him in my life than I would with my parents. That's his life. That's his, life story, maybe his trauma that he's dealing with still, his wounding, but that's his truth, right? So if that's true for him, he decided that he wouldn't give up more to keep his wife than he would to keep his goals. He basically said that his goals are more important to him than his spouse. And that was true for him. And he had to call his spouse over, Layla, his partner, and say, hey, baby, just so you know, my goals are more important to me than you based on the definition of love I'm using, which is the more I want to, am willing to give up, the more I love. And she said, oh, I know. My greatest goal in this life is to help you with your goals. That's why we're perfect together. And for him, it was just like essentially she is the conduit to what I achieve. And everything that I achieve, she reaps the benefits of. We're constantly like growing this garden bigger and bigger and bigger. And it's a very beautiful thing, because you think about Layla, she's a powerhouse businesswoman. She's running a large part of this company. She's leading meetings. She's got a lot of authority, but it's still in service of his greater goal. And so I think about this and just how meaningful that is in the long run for union between man and wife. And I'm always asking that question, like, what is the most beautiful, holy, harmonious way that we can unite and be in union? And sometimes it takes thinking a couple steps ahead, in the sense of like, okay, I'm really passionate about, XYZ as a woman. Okay, that means I need to get to the top of this industry and like be number one and be the best. Maybe, but maybe that's not deep down what you want. Maybe instead, what you want is to understand what it is that you're amazing at, what you're passionate about. Find the self-expression and the excitement in the things that you're good at and do them. And especially when you're still single, like you're out there, you're making money, you're doing the things. But then when you come across a man that has big goals and big dreams, find a way to utilize all the magic, all the like delicious intuition magic, so many beautiful things that God gave women that he did not give men. The influence, the warmth, the ability to see things that men can't see. Use all of that and your purpose and your talents and the things you love and support him in achieving his greater goal, right? Because in the end, you can't be trying to achieve the highest public office rank and he's trying to achieve the highest public office rank. You're both then living two separate lives, and you're not going to, it's not going to work out. You're not going to be able to be together. You're going to be alone as a woman. You're going to be alone. And I think this is a very complicated, difficult thing for women to grasp. And I'm myself, really thinking through how to be a fully expressed woman that is utilizing her talents and her skills in a way that is meaningful and is creating the space for the most harmonious union possible. That is the goal. That is the mission. And so what I've come to in some of these conversations and in all of my research and just in what feels right is this connection to intuition and what is meaningful for us as co-creative partners, and how we as women tap into our intuition to support the great potential of the men that we love, the men that we fall in love with, the men that we see as our potential husband, right? And for them, going back to the beginning of the episode, that's that greatest pain point, to not be seen as a human and being given the benefit of the doubt and to be supported and cheered on. It's such a masculine and important thing that is needed. I was listening to Alison Armstrong, and she talks about the difference between feminine and masculine hurt and pain. And within both men and women, we have both types of pain. But when she focuses on masculine pain, it's less about like, you hurt my feelings. It's more about, you disrespected me. You disregarded me. You blew me off. You didn't support me. You didn't encourage me, right? It's like, this is what is important to the masculine. That is what's most painful. And so when at the very first moment you meet a man and you're already sizing him up, not giving him the benefit of the doubt, you've already lost it. You've already disregarded him, disrespected him. You've already not supported him. And so that energetically comes through, and then that's not really a ripe space to create a connection. And so I think that's just so meaningful. And these stories that we tell, and this Hormozy example, and the Rachel story from the Bible, and Beauty and the Beast, and you think about, like Churchill and his wife and all the support that she gives him. And I think there is this real question for women. Like, I've been told for the last 40, 50 years that I have to do everything a man can do. I have to rise to the ranks of these high positions. And what's so interesting to me is like, it's just such a masculine desire to want to be in a high ranking position. It's something that men are naturally equipped for, and it's something that they yearn for, because what's interesting is men lead through position, but women lead through influence. Like, we don't need, like, as women, we actually don't need hierarchies to be leaders. We have this innate wisdom that if we're only tapped into our intuition, we can access, right? If we're connected to God, if we're tapped into our intuition, we can access that. And so there is this idea of, I was talking about this the last episode too, like, why are women so not tapped into their intuition, right? Well, this is not all of it, but starting with the birth control pill. I talked about this before. Like, there's no way that having a foreign object, technological cocktail of things put into your body, there's no way that doesn't blunt and stop your intuition, right? It's a hormonal imbalance that you're creating. Something that is working really beautifully, you're halting. Downstream from that, all of the SSRIs that women are on these days. Yeah, the antidepressant medications, all of the different medications that women are taking, popping a Xanax, popping this, popping that. It's just, there's this deep, it's like the second wave of feminism said women must do everything that men can do. And there's this just like push for freedom and everything is about independence, independence, independence. Yet women are the ones most depressed, right? Women are the ones that are most inclined to have low self-esteem and have all of these difficulties because women are not equipped to desire high ranking positions in the way that men do. Maybe some women do, right? Maybe some women do. And you know what? That's great. But that is a small minority. And again, it does no one any good to focus in and change the world for a small minority and leave the majority out to dry. The majority of women, especially what happens when women ignore their intuition and don't focus on what really matters to them, which is usually for most women, family and children, they get to 45 and it's too late. And y'all, there are these support groups on Facebook for women that it's too late for them to have children, and they're horrifying to read. It is the deepest, deepest, saddest, most anguishing, like, oh. And I have a lot of women that I know that are in their 30s, and some of them might, get there when they're 45, 47, right? And I just think it's an important thing to come on back to, right? This idea of believing in a man's potential, seeing his character, seeing how he shows up for you. What does he want? And then to take yourself into his equation and support him in that. One thing I wanted to share is I just had a great interview with the Rebbitzin, who does this Kabbalah sessions with me. We had a conversation on the purpose of marriage, and she basically comes from this portion of Judaism, this like group within Judaism called Chabad. And what Chabad is it's essentially an organization that takes a rabbi and his wife, both of them, and kind of sends them to different towns all over the country, all over the world to grow the joy of Judaism, right? To grow Judaism there. And mind you, they don't just send a single rabbi, or a single Orthodox Jewish girl. They only send a husband and wife team once they are married. Why? Because they bring something together that they could not bring alone. The whole is greater than the sum of its parts. And when you go back to thinking about what's possible when a woman taps into her intuition and really understands the potential that a man in front of her has, it's so wild what happens. It's so crazy what happens. My favorite dance couple, okay? They are so well known. They are very popular. They perform all over the place. They get paid plenty of money. When they first met, he wasn't doing that alone. He had an idea somewhere in the back of his mind, but then he met her and she inspired him and encouraged him. And so one of my favorite teachings within the masculine and the feminine and learning how to co-create and balance each other and is this idea of the garden and the gardener. So a lot of people like to say, oh, the masculine is this container. It's just this like fixed container. And then the feminine is what goes inside and the masculine holds the feminine. Yeah, the masculine is absolutely a container, but what kind of container? I love the analogy that the feminine is the garden, but the masculine is actually the gardener. And guess what? The garden gets to grow. Maybe it starts small, but then as the garden is there growing and growing and growing, He continues to garden. He continues to give nutrients back into the garden, and the garden grows exponentially. And then his domain, right? His sphere of influence gets bigger and bigger and bigger. And what happens to her? Her expression gets bigger and bigger. Maybe it was just a bed of roses. And now there's lilies and roses and fig trees and this and that. And there's so much there. And that is the magic of feminine expression and utilizing your gifts for this co-creative mission, which is to help your man in his greatest goals. And there's no accident when you are living your truth as a woman and you are doing exactly what feels right for you, and you are expressing and you're healing, and you're showing up unapologetically as who you are and what you believe in, you will attract exactly the type of man whose goal is compatible with yours, right? And then you can co-create that together. And I just think that is the most beautiful thing in the world. And I'm so sick of, what are you going to do for me? Or just this like idea that everyone has to have this like equal and perfect, like, I don't know, like resume or something when they meet. That's not how life works. That's not how union works. That's not how magical things get created. Magical things get created with trust, support, respect, and understanding where people are at in life, and having that vulnerability to say, I'll step in, I'll lean in. Now you lean in, and we're leaning in together. So with that, I'm going to end this one, but I hope you've enjoyed this little episode on a woman's intuition and a man's potential. Till the next one, y'all. Hello, everybody. You got your host, Anya Shack here, and I hope you've enjoyed this episode. I am so excited to be here and sharing my wisdom, my truths, all the research I do, from pop culture to science to evolutionary psych, to really come together and bring y'all the information that men and women really need to understand themselves better and to understand what the other needs better. This is my mission. This is something I'm so passionate about. So if you've gotten some value from this episode, please, please, please share it with someone you know. This helps me grow the podcast, and that is exactly what I intend to do this year. Sending y'all so much love.